Welcome to Raising Mommy, a podcast sanctuary where moms can come to listen, share, learn, and grow. I'm your host, Kimberly Tyson, vegan blogger for eatplantsforlife.com, wife and mom of two. Here in the studio today, I am joined by board-certified psychiatrist Dr. Karla Viera of Path Group of Atlanta. Path Group of Atlanta specializes in adult, child, and adolescent psychiatry and therapy. Thank you for coming back to the show.
Thank you for having me.
So, our real chat topic for today is body boundaries, consent, and respect. When many parents think of toddlers and preschoolers and they think of body boundaries, I'm speaking for myself, you think of teaching your child about not biting their friends, not pushing, not shoving. But it's a lot more than that for preschoolers and for toddlers. Body boundaries is a personal set of rules that define what is good touch and bad touch, and the types and amount of touching a child is comfortable with. It also includes respecting others' boundaries and consent. With the talk of the Me Too movement, rape and assault on campuses, sex trafficking, it's never too early to plant the seed as it relates to body boundaries. What are body boundaries? Why are they so important to establish with your children early?
Exactly. And I love to see boundaries even as a more general subject, right? So when we see boundaries, we see it on everything, on society, basically, right? Like you have the boundaries even with what it's countries and what is the rules and the laws, and you have to follow these instructions, or if not, you're going to get in trouble. Right. So when we look at it from a personal standpoint, you can have physical boundaries, which is easier to understand, which is with the touching, with the kind of like respect and body consent. But we can also talk about boundaries in terms of like your emotional boundaries and where they are, and even your mental boundaries. Like what do you accept from yourself and what do you accept for others, right? From others. So when we see boundaries, even in the concept of development, as a baby, the babies don't have any, right? Like there's no boundaries. The mommy is really their boundaries, the ones that protects them, that they don't let a stranger come in and touch them, right? As they start growing, they actually start showing more signs. So what happens when they're 6 months or so? They start developing stranger anxiety. So what is stranger anxiety? It's a way of saying, I really don't want you to touch me. I want to go with mom. Right? So even there, you can start seeing that they're developing a little bit this demarcation of where is their personal space, right? As they keep growing, for example, if we look at toddlers, what do toddlers do? They start experimenting. They start testing.
Get curious.
They start curious. They start kind of like trying to learn. How many times as a mom, your kid actually kind of like punches you or gives you a slap, right? And the mom then or the caregiver has the task there of setting those boundaries for the toddler, right? So you do not hit mommy. Like your hands are for touching or for caressing. They are not for hurting me, right? When they go, for example, into preschool or into daycare, then what happens? The teacher there starts setting up those boundaries. You have to keep your hands to yourself. You cannot touch other people. You cannot share utensils. And even if we think about just not the body boundaries, but then the mental or the emotional boundaries is you treat each other with respect. You say please and thank you. You don't just go and take somebody, take something from somebody else. So those are kind of like those more emotional or mental boundaries. With the parent also, it's you don't shame your kid, right? So that's kind of like understanding and giving them that respect. So with little ones, and I started that conversation with my little one when he was 4, and interestingly, he actually got it very easily. You can describe it like personal space is kind of like a bubble, right?
Okay.
And that bubble can shrink or can kind of like inflate depending on situations, depending on people, depending even on your mood, right? So in that, and for everybody, that personal bubble, it's different. With, for example, his bubble with me, it's going to be a little bit thinner. So I can just go in and hug him and kiss him,
Right.
versus a stranger coming in and hugging him and kissing him,
Right.
right? His personal bubble with his friends are different. And that's where you put your hands to yourself. You don't touch other people. You cannot just go and kiss your little friend in the mouth.
Right.
Like that. That's not appropriate. So they can really understand that. And that's also when they start with the conversation of what is consent. And with little ones, it is just, you know, going to your friend, and if you want to hug them, then actually asking them, so can I hug you? If they say yes, then you can. If they say no, then you do have to respect that, right? And if they say yes on Monday, it doesn't mean that they're going to say yes on Tuesday.
Right.
Right? So understanding also body language. If you say, yeah, I want to go there and I want to hug you, but then you see kind of like the other little kid kind of like taking a step back or looking down or just crossing their arms, then you have to understand that they probably don't want it. And even in little kids, they really can get kind of that sense of how people feel. When moms say, I think that's a little bit more knowledgeable now than before. But when somebody comes and you say, okay, so little Bobby, can you go and hug Uncle Tom? And when they say no, like, are you going to force them? No. No, exactly. Because that's when they start understanding that their body is theirs. And they are the only ones that can really say somebody can touch me or not.
So the parent that has a toddler, what would you tell a mom as far as when to start the conversation or the dialogue?
Early, like as early as you can, because the boundary development is going to be there, even if you know it or not, even if you talk about it or not, right? So early meaning, and if you want to go to like an extreme, it could even be like when you're giving them a bath and it's like, okay, so let me help you clean up here, right? But when we look at it a little bit more realistically, probably when they start going to daycare or when they start going to other places where the mom or the caregiver is not going to be there, it's important. Like starting saying, so for example, if we talk about private parts, the private parts are the ones that are covered by a swimsuit.
Okay.
And nobody can touch you there.
Okay.
Right? Even, and I always, even to my kids, I say, even mommy or daddy or a doctor cannot touch you in a way that is not comfortable for you.
Okay.
The only two reasons why we're going to touch you is to keep you clean and to keep you safe.
Okay.
That's it. That's the only two reasons. And even if somebody like us, even if mommy or even if daddy or granny or whoever, somebody touches you and you don't like it, you have to say it.
Okay.
You have to say no.
So let's say you've never had the conversation and you are the parent of a elementary school child. How would that conversation go? How was that dialogue set up?
So even if you haven't had the conversation, they're already having the conversation probably in school. So they're probably more in tune with it than we know as parents. And you can start a conversation just talking about, like, how do you feel when somebody goes to you and give you a hug or they shake your hand? Are you comfortable? Have you ever felt uncomfortable when somebody has touched you? Have you been able to say no? And if they haven't, then really practicing that. or what feels good for you. Like if I go and hug you, does that feel good? Does that not feel good? And even with mommy, you can have boundaries. An interesting example that I had recently was with my boy, with my 4-year-old. We had like this discussion of body boundaries, and we examined like his bubble and how he feels. And he's my lovey cuddler. He's just a mama's boy. So there was one day that I go pick him up from school, and I say, "So, can I have a hug?" And he said, "Nope, I don't feel like hugging today." And in my mind, I'm like, really? Like,
Choking
you don't
back
want
tears.
me? Exactly. Like, why do you want to hug me?
Right.
But he's like, "No, I don't want to hug." I'm like, "Okay, you don't want to hug. Okay." Like, and I'm trying to here kind of manipulate a little bit. Like, "So do you want to sleep with me tonight?" "Nope, I don't want to."
Oh, is he testing you?
Yes.
Okay.
So in my mind, I'm like, okay, so I gotta respect you. And I even told him,
Yeah.
like, okay, so I'm gonna respect your body boundaries. I literally said that to him. The next day, then I go pick him up and I ask him again, "So can I have a hug?" And he's like, "Yeah, now you can have hugs, mommy."
Oh, yeah.
And I'm like, "So what happened?" And he's like, "I was angry with you because you had grounded me."
Oh my goodness.
Exactly. So then I thinking about it back, I had grounded him, meaning put him on a timeout a couple of days back.
So he grounded you.
So he grounded me. Exactly.
So-
Exactly.
So how would the conversation start if it's the first one for a middle schooler?
For a middle schooler, I try always to start kind of like normalizing some situations in terms of it is understandable if, you're hitting puberty, you're having some curiosities. You might even be curious of what other people look like, but you always have to respect them no matter what, right? And if somebody says that it's not okay to touch, then it's not okay, even if you don't like that answer.
Okay.
And really exploring, it depends on the situation in specific, right? But really exploring with them, what do they understand it's good touch versus bad touch.
Do you suggest role play?
Yes, role play is really important because a lot of kids and adults in general, a lot of people sometimes don't feel comfortable saying no. So even if they don't want to. And that's where the understanding body language comes from, right? Like even if that person says yes, but they are, they're crossing their hands or they're taking a step back, then is that really a yes? Or are they saying because they're not comfortable saying no? Right? So role playing in terms of if you want to say no, but you don't feel comfortable, like what do you say? And you can talk with them of what they feel comfortable. They can give an excuse. For middle schoolers, for example, when they're in sleepovers and something is happening and they don't feel comfortable, you can, in a safe space, you can text your parent and you can text a signal.
I was going to ask you about that.
Yeah, or a word or something. And the parent can call you back and say, "Oh, we have an emergency at home, so we got to come pick you up."
Yeah. It's so difficult, I think. By the time they get in middle school, they don't want to talk about it. It's such an uncomfortable conversation for them. So I find myself using things that we see on TV as examples. Do you suggest that as well?
Yes, definitely. It's kind of like teaching without they even noticing that you are.
Right. Yeah, I'll ask, we'll see something on TV and I'll say, "So what would you do in that situation?" And that's how it usually comes up. So they don't feel so uncomfortable too with talking about it.
And even with I know it's another thing, but I think it's important because I see it a lot in kids and actually in adults, is that sometimes grooming, like when there are other people trying to get into that space, it's not always going to feel bad.
Okay.
Right? Because the grooming situation with an adult, they're going to try to manipulate the kid into feeling good, and that makes them more compliant to do things. They can give them more attention. They can give them actual rewards, right? And that's where the shame starts, even with adults,
Okay.
right? Because in a way, it's like I feel like it's wrong or it's not right for me, but it's conflicting because it can be. And kind of like trying to take that shame, even, when it's an adult and a kid situation, of you are the kid. He's the one that has to put the boundaries. Okay? And it is okay to say something. That's really, really important.
So why is it important, and this is a big topic for me, why is it so important to use correct terms for body parts?
Great. Yeah, that is really, really important. So one of them is communication. It's very different if, for example, a kid goes to the pediatrician and say, Uncle Johnny touched my wee-wee. So what does wee-wee mean? Right? It could be penis. It could be my butt. It could even be my belly button. Right? So what does it mean? That is one of them. The other thing important is to kind of like take away the shame, because it is a body part just like any other body part, and everybody has the same body parts, right? So you take that shame away.
So why is it important to have a safe word for kids?
Because a lot of kids are not gonna, even with adults, they're not gonna feel comfortable saying some things. The same, like the shame, the embarrassment, I did something wrong. So for them, if they feel like mommy or daddy are gonna get angry if I say something, having that established beforehand, it opens up that conversation to say, I'm not gonna get mad. You actually can trust me. And you don't even have to say like the whole thing. Like you can just use a safe word.
Okay.
Like if you feel like you cannot say no, for example, like we were talking about the sleepovers, just having that safe word, it gives them more that space so that they can support them and kind of like rescue them in a way. They don't have to be brave all the time.
Right.
They're still learning that. They're still developing that courage, and it's okay. Because sometimes it is difficult to say no if you want to please another person. If you don't want them to get mad. And when it's with a family, even more difficult.
We actually have a safe text that if they're at their friend's house or whoever's house and they're spending the night, they'll text something to us. And it's a random word, but they both know it. And that means I need to be rescued.
Yes, perfect.
Good.
Perfect. Good. That is really good.
How often do you suggest bringing up the topic?
As often as you can. As often as you can. With, like you mentioned, like just with interactions, and just not body, but how do you talk with other people? Because even if we develop that or we think about what happens in adults, that's where, for example, even like domestic abuse can happen. A lot of people don't understand that abuse is not just physical. It can be, of course, mental. It can even be sexual abuse, even if you're married. Like if you said no, it's no. It doesn't matter. Right? So having those conversations early gives them that power to understand that it is okay to say no. And then, okay, so I said no, what do I do next? Because sometimes we forget about that. Okay, so they said, okay, no, don't touch me. And now, like, we're still in the same space. What do we know now?
Yeah, I think it's hard I think what parents need to know that it's okay when the child doesn't want to give hugs and maybe offer an alternative to hugs, like a high five or a fist pump. Do you usually suggest that?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes. Yeah.
Absolutely. Great. I think too, as parents, we need to, and you tell me what you think about this, we need to model the behavior because they do what they see. My husband and I actually, we established a rule early on, and that rule was no secrets, only surprises. Do you agree?
Yes, that's
Because we
exactly
don't
what
want
I.
them to keep secrets. We, if we're going to surprise daddy, we'll surprise him, but there's never a moment where we're like, this is our secret. So that they establish that early on that there are no secrets, only surprises. We never forced hugs on them. Usually we'll have like an uncle or distant relative that says, oh, they don't want to give me a hug. And it was, well, maybe they can give you a high five or a fist bump. They're just not, into that. And we even, when they were potty trained, we would shut the door and then knock before coming in, just so they knew, okay, this is my space. They're asking to come into my space. Do you have other suggestions for parents?
That's great. I really like that. I like the fact that you are even establishing like those body boundaries within the family. Something that happened to us recently. I have a daughter and a son, right? So my daughter, when she was around 6, she got really curious on how did daddy look like, because she has never seen it. She has seen mommy naked, because I really don't care as much. That's where my body boundary is, but he's very conservative on that. So there was one day that she asked me, so if daddy doesn't let me see him, can you take a picture and show it to me?
Oh.
And which I could have, gotten angry and shame her. But of course, we cannot do that because it is a natural curiosity. So I took that opportunity to say, you know what? Daddy doesn't like that. That's his space, and he doesn't like to be seen, like for anybody to see his private parts. How would you think that somebody would feel if somebody that they didn't want to see them naked would see them? How do you think they would feel? And then she said, like, yeah, that probably wouldn't feel good. And I'm like, okay, so we have to respect his body boundaries.
So in a sense, we're teaching them to be empowered with their bodies.
Exactly.
But also respect others and their boundaries, and having empathy for others, in essence. A resource that I found very helpful, and don't be alarmed by the web address, but it's on everydayfeminism.com. So there's an article. It's called Healthy Sex Talk, Teaching Kids Consent Ages 1 to 21. And it's really good. So I would, if you're curious and want more information about that, if you go to their website at everydayfeminism.com, look on the right side under articles featured and type in Healthy Sex Talk. It pops up. It's a really great resource. Do you have other resources that parents could use? Because I'm sure that there are, they want to know how to bring up the conversation, what to say at each age group. Do you have other resources that you
There
have?
are some really good books out there. There is one that is called Body Boundaries Consent, which is a good resource. The Break the Cycle. It's more about abuse, but it can it does bring some of the conversations at least out in the open. So those are one of the main ones I can look up.
I actually found, and I also found a couple of books that are probably for the smallest children. My Body Belongs to Me by the International Center for Assault Prevention. Miles is the Boss of His Body by Samantha Counter. God Made All of Me by Justin Holcomb. I Said No, A Kid-to-Kid Guide to Keeping Private Parts Private by Kimberly King. Some Secrets Should Never Be Kept. My Body, What I Say Goes. Let's Talk About Body Boundaries, Consent, and Respect. And No Means No. All of those books are by Janine Sanders. And C is for Consent by Eleanor Morrison. I think all of those books are on Amazon. So
Exactly.
those are great
Perfect.
books.
Yeah. The one that I use with my little kids is there. Like the body boundaries, consent, and And it was really good.
Okay.
Like they both got it so easily, and they're different ages.
So the takeaway from this is it's never too early.
It's never too early. Yes, it's never too late.
Oh, that's it. Okay, absolutely.
Because I've had those conversations even with adults
Oh,
when they come into the practice, and they feel so much shame. They feel so much there's so much going on that they've never been able to express, or that they didn't understand. And even as adults is when they start understanding what happened to me wasn't right.
so what do you see as if it's not something that's addressed as a child? What do you see as happening as an adult when it's not?
Great
learned
question.
early?
Great, really good question. So we see a lot of different things. Even when we talk about what is like psychological boundaries, right? And the same, like we can imagine kind of like that bubble, and how it shrinks and how it inflates. So as an adult, you have like a smaller bubble with your partner, right? Like you can talk about like dreams and fears and all of that, versus when you go into your work and with a coworker, you're not going to talk about those things. It would be pretty weird if you start talking
Right.
about your fears, about your dreams.
Right.
So that right there tells you there's a little bit of problem with boundaries. Versus, for example, the person that goes into a bank and they start talking about what happened to their families, or what happened, what did they do on the week? And then you see, okay, there's a little bit odd. There's something odd in there. So you can see that they haven't developed good boundaries yet. So it affects the social interaction, and that's a way when you can start working on it.
So it affects how they are, their relationships with others.
Exactly.
So what about their relationship with themselves?
The relationship with themselves, very important too. So how I see it is that you have to have boundaries even with yourself. And it starts early on into how do you talk to yourself? Do you go out of your house and you say, oh, I forgot to turn off the light, I'm an idiot? So that right there, it's kind of like a microaggression to yourself, right? Like what would happen if a friend goes to you and say, oh, so you forgot to turn off the light, you are an idiot. Right? So that friend probably wouldn't be your friend for so long.
Right.
So those little microaggressions start, and and you start kind of like losing respect for yourself, and you start losing a little bit of that self-esteem. So then especially in teenagers, then what we see is cutting, is self-harming. When they start relationships, like intimate relationships, then letting that person control them. Or when they start a sexual relationship when they were not really prepared to do so, because they felt like they needed to please that other person. Right? So we can definitely see those kind of boundary violations. And with adults, of course, then domestic abuse or unhealthy relationships. And
how do you what do you say to parents, because this is an issue with the tweens and the teens? You see on social media, on the news, on videos, people that are a little bit more what's the word, they tend to show a lot of their body, and they glamorize it. I think that would have a negative effect on impressionable children. What do you say about that with social media and the celebrities glamorizing things that are a little bit promiscuous to regular people?
Yes. No, great question. And it goes all the way back to how you see, like as a parent, how do you talk to your child, right? Like, for example, when they're exercising, are you focusing on how good they look, or are you focusing on how strong you feel, how exercise can give you energy and can be a stress reliever and can give you clarity. So focusing, very important to kind of like on the function of your body versus how it looks, is important. And the other thing, it's very clearly, when just telling them, okay, so when you're seeing this person there, what is it that they're valuing about themselves? Are they valuing just how they look? Are they valuing their brain or their skills? What do you want to be known for?
And is that how they really look?
Exactly. Yes. And yeah.
Right.
Yes.
They've been airbrushed.
They've been airbrushed. They
Right.
probably were eating broccoli and chicken and
Right.
exercising 8 hours a day and dehydrating themselves.
Right. So I think that the takeaway here is start early. Keep the conversation going. Role play. Use real life news, TV scenarios as they get older to help them establish those boundaries and respect themselves, respect others, know what consent is. Do you agree? Anything to add on that?
And that it's never and that it's never too late. Because even if you have a kid that it's young adult, it is okay to still talk about that.
Okay.
And I think normalizing things, it's so important. Normalizing curiosity is so important. And understanding that shame, like even if I think that's so important, that even if there were some parts of certain situations that they enjoyed, that's normal too. Because then it takes away that shame. Because a lot of the secrets are kept because of that conflict of, this happened to me and I know I shouldn't like it and I know I should just tell my mom. But there's that conflict of maybe I enjoyed it a little bit.
Okay.
So taking that away, and that's how secrets are kept, because then they feel guilty or they feel responsible, which is how we see trauma a lot in adults. And that it can have, which the same thing, I think this is another theme, but when there is somebody that has been abused, sexually abused, not necessarily they're going to have an aversion to sex. Some of them, a lot of them actually become hypersexual.
Okay.
And that's normal. That I mean, not normal, but that's expected. That's an expected consequence.
That's the pattern.
Yeah.
Okay.
And it's like looking for that control, like looking for that empowerment that they didn't have, which creates a lot of shame, which creates a lot of secrets.
This is a great topic. I'm glad you suggested it. We needed to bring it up. It's very important.
It is, and it sadly I see it a lot in teenagers. It goes to just starting relationships that they're not ready, to cutting, to disordered eating.
Yeah.
All of that. It's kind of goes all together.
Well, it's a good topic too, because we're seeing some of the result of it not being established with everything we see on the news, with the Me Too movement, with all of the assault charges or trafficking,
yes,
pedophilia. So it was a very good topic to talk about, and I thank you for coming to the show again, and you're welcome here anytime. You can find Dr. Karla Viera from Path Group of Atlanta at 550 Far Road, Suite 605 in Atlanta. The number there is 404-235-5982, or you can go online at pathgroupatl.com. Be sure to find Raising Mommy anywhere you listen to podcasts. Check out new episodes every Saturday. Follow us on Twitter at RaisingMommyGA. Search for me on Facebook and Instagram at eatplantsforlife.com or Raising Mommy Podcast. Don't forget to email me at raisingmommy@appenmediagroup.com to share the random, fun, and sweet things your kids say, text, or do for our Off the Cuff Kids segment. If your comment is chosen for a future show, you'll win a gift card. Remember, first names only, and please include the age or grade of your child. If you have a screenshot of the text or note or a photo of the deed, please also include it in your submissions. As always, thanks for listening.